Alright guys, welcome back for another video. In today's video I want to talk about a little bit of a psychological topic. Somebody asked me a little while ago if I could do another psychology topic, and the one thing that came to mind is sort of the topic of independent thinking, but also, challenging your own biases, your own assumptions. Now, that may sound, a little bit contrary from somebody who is probably perceived as being very bullish on Bitcoin. But, I think a healthy dose of this is good in general, right? We need to constantly challenge our beliefs, but not only challenge our beliefs, but also challenge, the information that's being inputted into our minds from other people outside of ourselves. So while we need to challenge our own internal belief structures, they are more valuable than external belief structures. So creating a distinction between those two is very important. Now, of course, we do need to challenge our own internal belief structures, or we'll get rigid in our thinking and we won't be able to adapt to changes in information in the environment. But we also want to foster the type of creativity, not necessarily creativity, but the capacity to think independently. And what I mean by that is to look at the market and sort of tune out the external information and create your own biases, your own assumptions, your own interpretations of what's happening and what you can expect to happen. And that, if you're watching this video, that probably doesn't really apply to you because you're watching a video that is trading related and market related, and so in that sense you're looking for information to about the market and something that you can incorporate to help you, which is great, but really that's not the most valuable quality of information. The most valuable quality of information is something that is derived from within yourself, something that nobody had to tell you, something that, an idea, a statistical model, or some type of distinction in the market that you naturally find yourself drifting back to, even without anybody telling you that it's important, or even better, if they tell you that it's not important and you still find yourself constantly drifting towards it. That's generally going to be a good sign that that's something you actually need to focus on, because it's self-generated. It's coming from within. So, it's a little bit of a nuanced thing there because, you definitely want to tune out anything anybody's saying, right? I mean, all the videos I make on the market, that's all great, but at the end of the day, they're my opinions, and, if somebody else tries to take my opinion and work with them, it's just not going to work as well as it does for me, right? And it's optimal for me, and it's obviously incorporated into a strategy that I've been utilizing for a long time, and people are not necessarily able to embrace that and adopt that right away, right? Or even at all, really. So creating a type of your own mental models that generate your own view about reality, generate your own understanding about the market, different data releases, different effects on the market, different second derivative, type of events and thinking. Those are all very important, right? And that's how you really get out onto the curve, right? To generate alpha, right? Because that's how you get towards the information that is really not priced into the market, right? If you are operating on information that is really popular on Twitter and everybody's talking about it, well, at best, that information's already priced into the market and there's no value there. At worst, you're entering a crowded trade that's going to get, be rocket fuel to go the other direction in the market. So that's another good point, is that to understand the market, in a way it does help to understand how most people are thinking, because the market's probably going to do the opposite. But you don't want to identify with that too much, because even if you set out with the the intention of studying the way the group is thinking and getting really in depth with it, over time you'll find yourself pulled into that, right? It's just, as human beings, it's just the way we're designed, right? We spend enough time around people and we start to adopt their way of thinking. We're social creatures, so you want to be really on guard with that. You want some way to check into the sentiment of the market without getting pulled in too much, at least from my perspective. And then finally, kind of getting back to the quote that we're looking at, and the only thing I know is that I know nothing. It's that is a fundamental reality of the market. And I know that may seem very confusing for a lot of people, but it is a very healthy way to perceive the market and interact with the market, because ultimately it is true, right? All the interpretations and beliefs that we create about the market have no bearing whatsoever on what the market does. And I know that sounds very strange to say, because you're supposed to be able to study the market and understand the market, but it's just a fundamental truth. There's no way to put the market into a box and be able to expect a certain type of behavior. It's just, there's no way to do it. We can operate on probabilities, but it's better to land on the thinking of probabilistic thinking by starting from the premise that we don't know anything, because then we're much more open to the possibility that we're going to be wrong, which is always a very real and significant reality. So if we have certain biases about the market, we want to challenge them. Now, I don't really want to go into these, the narratives that exist right now in the market, because I want to create a video that's a little bit more timeless than that, right? I'm trying to create a video that will hold up over time and not be, applicable to the current narrative. But you do want to guard yourself against the current narrative. I mean, it can be very dangerous, right? And there's very, very, very few cases where the current narrative is true. And that's not really something you can backtest it, because it's not, it's not very obvious in hindsight. But if you were there during the market and you have a lot of experience in the market, people who have had experience in the market, they all realize that, right? Because they've had the experience to see the market in all different phases of the cycles, and that the sentiment in the market and the narratives are just totally unaligned with the reality of what is about to happen in the market. It's just totally unaligned. There is no connection at all, and at worst, a very negative connection. I found this for myself when I journal, and I often find journaling to be incredibly useful. I do it all the time. But, while it is important all the time, it's particularly useful during extremes in the market cycle. Like if there's a capitulation event or price is going parabolic, that's really, really the time when you want to be in there journaling. Because, again, the volatility, extremes in volatility bring out extremes in human psychology, right? So you're experiencing those extremities, right? And you want to journal them. That's the best time to journal, get the most out of it. And, I've done that personally, and I found for myself, when I go back and look at those journal entries and look at the way I felt during those market extremes, they're always, always different than the realities that actually existed in the market. Almost always. And that's from somebody who has spent a lot of time, interacting with the markets and, and intellectually knows how the psychological principles work. That doesn't matter. Like when you're in the moment and you're in those extremities, the same factors apply to you as everybody else. Like you still have human biology. You still have the same software system. You're not immune to it. The good thing, though, is that while you're not immune to it, you can create rigid rules and structures for how that is able to influence your behavior. So you can't necessarily stop feeling a certain way. You can't. You're always going to sort of be along for the ride in that sense. But you can implement a rigid system that, governs your behavior, right? And you can have the discipline to maintain that system. And especially if it's a plan that has been in writing for a long period of time, then you can reference it, during those extremes in the market. And you can, and the longer ago you wrote it, the more value it ultimately has, because you can say, look, I wrote this down, a year ago, right? And it applies right now. So, and ultimately at the end of the day, in those market extremes, everybody has a choice to make, right? We can follow our rules, or we can abandon our rules. But going back again to the main theme of the video, ultimately the expectations and beliefs about the market that we create don't mean anything. If we truly believe that and truly embrace that in our core, then it makes following a rigid rule structure much easier. Because why wouldn't you follow a rigid rule structure if the outcome of the market is totally unpredictable? And again, I should preface this by saying that the longer you stretch your time horizon, the more predictable the market becomes. So if you're thinking 10 years out, that's actually far more predictable than a month out, and at scale between the whole duration. So that's something to keep in mind, right? You don't want to get swept up in short-term volatility, because short-term volatility is inherently more random and more driven by emotion and the inefficiency of demand and volatility of demand. But the long term is more governed by supply and game theory and is far more predictable. So again, for the sake of being brief, I'll end the video right there, and just ask you guys, if you like this content, just leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next upload.